Hey, what's up, guys? Happy Friday to you. The packet actually, all you're doing is taking notes with me on the 10 problems. You'll hand that in. And then this other one here, I'll do the front, you do the back. It's really easy, okay? You only have 4 to do, but we're going to do this first, okay? Okay, now, it's kind of the same thing we've been doing. It's a 2-step process when you're simplifying factors with exponents, okay? The first thing you do is, if you have any parentheses, circle them, okay? And then if you don't have a dividing line, make one. Just underline the whole problem, and there'll be nothing on bottom to start with, okay? That's the first 2 things you look at. If you have any parentheses, do the circling, and then make a line. Now, when you're down here, you got to ask yourself, do you have any numbers that aren't circled as exponents? No. I mean, these are numbers, but they're exponents, so we don't write them down. Now, what letter do I have? I have M. I do have it twice, but just write it once, and it would be on top. Okay, so there's 2 M's. So this M here is a 5th power. Again, I don't need to multiply because I didn't circle anything. And then the other M is right here. It's still on top, so we plus, and we're going to plus 2. So 5 plus 2 is 7. Okay, now all I had was M to the 7th power, and I don't need to clone M's, so that's going to be, I just put that over there, and that's the final answer. Okay, my next problem. Do I have any parentheses? Nope. So make your dividing line if you don't have one. And do you have any numbers here that are not circled? No, you don't. Okay, so you don't have any number bases. What letters do you have? You just have the letter N. It's on top, write it once. Okay, so here's my first N. It's to the 2nd. Here's my next N. It's to the 4th, and it's on top, so plus 4. And then here's my next N. It's on top of the line, so that's another plus 5. So 2 plus 4 is 6. 6 plus 5 is 11. Okay, so I just ended up with N to the 11th power, and it's pointless to clone variables, so letters, so N to the 11th will be the answer. Okay, first 2 pretty easy. Okay, now number 3, you have a parenthesis, so you better circle that and include the little 3rd power in the circle. Now make your own dividing line, okay, so you know where stuff goes. So what numbers do I have here that are not in a little circle? Well, we have a 3 and a 2. So what I do is I write 3 times 2. Okay, and what letters do I have? I have D. Now, I know there are 2 of them, but I just write it once. Don't repeat any letters when you're writing this down here. Okay, and everything's on top. So now let's look at our 3. So the 3 is to the 1 power, but that is in a circle. So we don't write 1 down. You take 1 times 3. What's 1 times 3? 1 times 3 is 3, so it's going to be 3 to the 3rd. That is the only big 3 I have. Now let's move to the 2. That's a 1, okay? Now I didn't put a circle around that, so I just bring the 1 down here, okay? Don't multiply it. Okay, and that's the only big 2 I have, so now let's move on to the D variable. There are 2 of them. We want to work from left to right. Okay, so here's the first D. It's to the 2nd, but I put that in the circle, so I got to multiply 2 times 3, and that's 6. Okay, now here's the other D. Now, you got to ask yourself, where's that D at? Is it on top of the line I drew, or is it on bottom? It's on top, so we're going to add, and that's not in a circle, so I just bring the 2 down. I don't multiply it. So 6 plus 2 is 8, so it's D to the 8th. So I ended up with 3 to the 3rd, 2 to the 1st, and D to the 8th. Now, we can do some cloning here. 3 to the 3rd would be 3 times 3 times 3, and that gives me a product of 27. So this changes into 27. 2 to the 1, now I don't really clone it, it's just a 2, so I bring 2 over. And then the D variable, we don't clone variables, that stays D to the 8th. Now, when we end up with these 2 big numbers on the same side of the line, we need to do the operation, which is times. So I take 27 and multiply it by 2. Okay? So 27 times 2 is 54. Just cross out, put 54 above it, okay, because that's on top of the line. Don't put it below it. 54 times d to the 8th. Excuse me. Okay, my next problem. Circle your parentheses first and include the exponent outside and here. Okay, and then make your dividing line. If you don't have one, just underline the entire problem so everything's on top. So what big numbers do I have that are not circled? 4 and 2. 4 times 2. Now, look for variables. You just have the letter x, okay? I know there are 2 of them, but just write it once. Okay, we're going to have to multiply pretty much everything because I circled everything, okay? So, let's look at the 4. It'd be to the 1 power. But I did circle it, so I got to take the 1 times the power that's outside. 1 times 3 is 3. That is the only big 4 I have, so let's move on to our next factor, the 2. Okay, 2 is to the 1. Again, that's in the circle, and I multiply 1 times 6. That's 6. Okay? All right. X. Now, again, we have 2 of them. Here's the first x. I take, again, it's in the circle, so I don't write 5 down. You got to take 5 times 3. 5 times 3 is 15, so 15. And then there's another x. Now, is it on top of that line you drew, or is it on bottom? It's on top, so we're going to plus. And 3 times 6, remember, don't write 3 down because we circled that. So 3 times 6 is 18. Now, 15 plus 18, if you need the calculator, that's going to be 33. Okay, so I got 4 to the 3rd, 2 to the 6th, and x to the 33rd power. Okay, so 4 to the 3rd, that would be cloning 4 3 times. And that gives you 64, so I can replace that with 64. I'm too lazy to clone this 2 6 times, so I'm going to use my little power button. 2 power 6, okay? 64. So 2 64s right together. Okay, and then the variable, we're not cloning anything 33 times, so it's good it's a variable. And then we have to actually do the operation with these two. These two are not variables, so we take 64 times 64. 4,096. Okay. Moving right along. For next two are easy. Okay. All right. You don't have any parentheses, and you already have the dividing line. Okay, it's drawn for you. So you don't have to really do anything to set the problem up. Now, do you have any numbers not circled? Nope, they're both circled, so they're powers. They're exponents. So what variables? You have a. Now, when you have a on top and on bottom, you put it on top. Okay, so and don't write a again. You got 13. And now my other a, is that under the line or on top of the line? It's under, so we're going to minus 9, because under means divide, so we would minus the exponent. So 13 minus 9 is 4, and a to the 4th is the only factor I have, and we don't clone variables, so a to the 4th is the final answer. Okay, next one. P over Q, got a little 7. Now we do have a parentheses here, and we already have the dividing line. Okay, if you see a line, you don't need to underline anything, okay? Okay, so my variables are P and Q, okay? I have no numbers. The only numbers is 7, but that's been circled as an exponent. That means you don't write a big one. Okay, so P is on top of the line, and the only Q I have is on bottom, okay? So let's figure these out. 1 is on the P. Now I did circle it, so I need to multiply 1 by 7, and that's 7. And let's look at the Q. That is also circled, so do not write just 1 down. You write 1 down here, but you don't carry it down here because you got to times 1 by 7, and that's 7. Okay, now those are both variables. We don't clone them, so I keep P to the 7th where it's at, and I keep Q to the 7th on the bottom where it's at. Okay, my next problem. Got a parentheses, okay, and the dividing line's there, okay, it's already there, you can see the line. Okay, what numbers do you have not in a little circle? You have 6 and 3. 6 would be on top, 3 would be on bottom. Okay, now what variables do we have? Okay, we have an X that's on top, and we have a Y that's on bottom. Okay, and that's pretty much it. Now let's put some exponents on these. Now I circled the whole thing, so any exponent that's in here has to be multiplied by 2. So 6 is to the 1, but I said it's in the circle, so I got to take 1 times 2, and that's 2. Okay, now here's my X. It's to the 9th, but I don't want to write 9 down because that's in the circle. So 9 times 2 is 18, and that's the only X I have, so I can move on down to the 3. Okay, 3 is to the 1, but again, that is in the circle, so we got to take 1. Don't write the 1 down. You got to take 1 times 2. That's 2. Okay, and here's the Y. It's the only one I have, so it's to the 4th. So I take 4 times 2. Again, that's in the circle. Okay, so I have 4 factors. 6 to the 2nd, X to the 18th, 3 to the 2nd, Y to the 8th. So 6 to the 2nd would be just cloning 2 6's, and that would make 36. 3 to the 2nd, I would clone 2 3's, and that's 9. Remember, put that on bottom because that's where the 3 to the 2nd was at. Okay, I do not clone variables. I just leave them with their exponents. Okay, now 36 and 9 are on opposite sides of the line. Okay, just leave the number. There is a way to simplify that, but that was kind of torquing some people off a few days back. So we're just going to leave them if they're on opposite sides. Don't try any operation with them. Okay, number 8. Parentheses here. Parentheses here. Now when you have 2 dividing lines that you see, just connect them so that it's just one whole. And you can always do that when it's multiplication. Okay, what numbers do I have that are not circled? 2, 3, both on top. So both those need to be on top. So what variables do I have? What letters? I have X. Now I have an X on top and an X on bottom, so we want to put it on top. And I've also have the letter Y. I have that on top and bottom, so put it on top. Okay, so I'm not going to start off with anything on bottom. I'm not going to have anything on bottom. Okay, let's look at the 2. Now I did circle everything, so we don't want to just write the 1 down. We got to multiply 1 by 3, which is 3, 2 to the 3rd. Now let's go look at our 3. That's the only big 2 I have. And 3. Okay. 3 is to the 1, but that's in a circle, so I don't want to write 1. I got to take 1 times 4, which is 4. Okay, now when I get to the letters, I want to count them first. I have an X here and an X here. So let's do the top. We always start on the top left. So that X is to the power, X to the 2nd power, and it's in the circle, so I got to take 2 times 3, which is 6. Now here's my other X. Is it under the line or on top of the line? It's under, so that would be minus, okay, not plus. Now that X is to the 1, but again, look at your circle. I need to take 1 times 3, so I will be taking 6 minus 3, which is 3, so X is to the 3rd. Okay, now let's look at our Y. There's 2 Y's, okay, top, bottom. Okay, left to right, there as my first Y. That's to the 4th, but again, that's in the circle, so I don't want to just write 4 down. I got to take 4 times 4, which is 16. Okay, now my other Y is on bottom. It's on bottom, so minus. And it would be to the 1 power since there's no power, but again, we circled it. So 1 times 4 is 4. 16 minus 4 then is 12, Y to the 12th. Okay, so here are my factors. 2 to the 3rd, 3 to the 4th, X to the 3rd, Y to the 12th. 2 to the 3rd you can clone. That would be 2 times 2 times 2, and that becomes 8. 3 to the 4th you can clone. 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, and that is 81. And then we leave the variables with their exponents. Don't clone the variables. Just keep them with their exponents. So x third, y to the 12th. That's exactly what I'm going to write over here. Okay, now we have to do the I want you to do the multiplication operation. Okay, if they're on opposite sides, I don't want you to divide them, but I do want you to multiply them. So 8 times 81. 648. Put that on top of it. 648 times x to the third times y to the 12th. Okay, number 9. So here's your big parentheses, and the exponent outside's sorry, I forgot to circle it, is at 2. Okay. All right, what numbers do I have not circled? Well, 5's 1, that's on top, the only one I have. The other one's a 2, that's on bottom, that's the only one I have, so I have to put it on bottom. Now variables, you have x, you have one on top, one on bottom, so put it on top, top's dominant. And then y, you got y on top, y on bottom, put it on top, top's dominant. If it's a tie, you do the top. Okay, now 5, okay. 5 is to the 1, but that big circle, 5's in it, so I got to multiply the 1 times 2, which is 2. That is the only 5 I have, so now I'm going to do the 2. The 2 is to the 1. Again, look at that circle. It's there, so I don't want to write 1 down. I got to write 1 times 2, and that's 2. Okay, now for x's, I have a couple of them. Start on the top, left to right. So here's the first x is to the third, but don't just write 3 down because we circled it, dude. So 3 times 2 is 6. And then here's my other x. Now you got to ask yourself, is it on top or bottom? This is on bottom of the dividing line, so that would be a minus. And 2 times 2 is 4. Now 6 minus 4 is 2. Okay. All right, now let's do the y. Okay. Here's my y. It's to the 4th. Okay. 4 times 2, that's going to be 8. That's on top. My next y, now where's it at? Top or bottom? It's on bottom of the line. So minus, and that's to the 1. But again, anything that comes out of here has to be multiplied by 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. 8 minus 2 is 6. So my 4 factors are 5 to the second, x to the second, y to the 6th, 2 to the second. Okay, so 5 to the second is cloning 2 5s, and that's 25. Now where's 5 to the second at? It's on top, so we want to keep that on top. 2 to the second would be 2 2s, and that's 4. Now if 2 to the second was on bottom, we got to put the 4 on bottom. And then times x to the second and y to the 6th. Don't mess with those. And again, these are dividing. Don't divide them. Okay. If the operation is to multiply, do it, but not divide. Okay. Because some of them become decimals, and you hated that ABC thing. Don't worry about it. Okay. Number 10. Final problem. The parentheses here, but keep in mind I do not have one here. So any power I have here, I'm just going to write down. Okay, what numbers do I have in this whole and by the way, if you have 2 dividing lines, just connect it into 1. All right, so what do I have here for numbers that aren't circled? I have a 6, the only one I have is on top. And I have a 2, the only one I have is on top. Okay. Now, variables. I got A. So I got 4 A's, but some of them are on top, some of them are on bottom, so put it on top. And then B's, again, I have some of them on top, some of them on bottom. So we can put them on top. Okay, and away we go. 6. 6 is to the 1, but did I put a big circle around that? No, so we're going to write the 1 down. Okay. Now the 2. Did I circle that? Yeah, sure did. So I don't want to write 1 on the 2. I need to multiply 1 times the outer exponent 3, and that's 3. Okay, now A, here's where the crap starts, crap fest. Here's your start at top left. That's to the 4th. Again, I did not circle that, so I write 4 down. Now let's go to this A. Now, am I still on top of the line, or am I on bottom? I'm on top still, so plus, and that A is to the 1. We got it again. We circled that, so 1 times 3 is 3. Okay, now my next A doesn't have a power, so it takes a 1 power, and I did not circle that, so I'm actually going to put a 1 here. Now I'm on the bottom of the line, so it's got to be minus 1. Then here's the final A. It's on bottom, so minus again, and then 2 times 3 is 6. Okay, so we just take 4 plus 3 is 7, 7 minus 1 is 6, and 6 minus 6 is actually 0. If you get 0, you can take the whole thing out. It's got to be a 0, though. Okay, and then B. Okay, here's my first B to the 5th. I didn't put the circle around it, so we're going to put the 5th right there. Here's my next B. We're still on top, so plus, and that would be to the 1 power. So 1 times 3 is 3. Okay. And 5 plus, and then we have another B, but that now I'm on bottom, so minus, and I put a 1, but I didn't make a big circle there. It's minus 1. My next B is right there, okay? It's on bottom, so minus again, and 2. Again, we circled that, so 2 times 3 is 6, okay? 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 minus 1 is 7. 7 minus 6 is 1, okay? B to the 1st. Okay, so my factors are 6 to the 1st, 2 to the 3rd, and B to the 1st. A went bye-bye because I added all the crap, subtracted it, got 0. So 6 to the 3rd would be just a 6, so we can just replace that with 6 and put it on top because that's where it's at. 2 to the 3rd would be 2 times 2 times 2, and that would be 8, okay? So, and then the B to the 1st is just going to stay B to the 1st, okay? Now again, these two ended up right beside each other, so we need to do the multiplication operation. 6 times 8 is 48. Okay, now that's kind of a pain in the butt. That's why I took it. Now this other assignment's really super simple. Okay, be on this side. In all these problems, the only thing you have is the x base. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. Just make 2 lines. And you got one on top, one on bottom. You're not going to have any parentheses, so no multiplying. So you put x, 3. The other x is under the dividing line, so minus 5. Now a little problem happens here. 3 minus 5 is negative 2. So you cross that out, put negative 2. Now, because that ended up as a negative, what you need to do is move the variable x here to the bottom, and its power of 2 becomes positive. You're not allowed to have negative powers, okay? And then you need to put a 1 over it if it ends up on bottom. So that's the answer. Pretty easy. And all these are the same thing, okay? If you get bored with this, you can go work on the assignment. Okay, line, line. So I've got x. I got 4. And again, now we're under, so minus 6. 4 minus 6 is a negative. It is negative 2 again. Once again, if that ends up negative right there, you need to move the x to the bottom so that the power of 2 becomes positive. Okay? 1. And I'm going to show you why. I'll use the next one to show you why this happens. Okay? Next one, just watch. Okay? Don't do the problems this way. Do them like this, a lot quicker. If you have x a second, that's x times x. If you have x a fifth, that's x cloned 5 times. Now, I don't clone variables. That's why I'm not doing it up here. Now, remember, dividing means we cancel out commons. Now, how many x's do you have? X to the 3rd, but they're on bottom. So that's why x to the 3rd goes on the bottom. And if you don't have the top, everything canceled on top, it's a 1. Okay? So that's how that works the way that it does. Okay, but I'm going to do it the quick way. Because some of these, like on this one, I don't expect you to write 10 x's and 20 x's. Okay, it'd be stupid. Okay, x a fifth divided by x to the 8th. Okay, same strategy, just not as much work. So you got x is the only factor you have. So you got 5. Dividing, so you're going to minus 8, okay? 5 minus 8 is negative 3. So since that ended up negative, the x goes into the denominator on the bottom, and the negative 3 becomes 3, Remember to switch the sign on that number. You want that to become positive. All you do is put it to the other side of the line. So 1 over x to the third. Okay, next problem. So I have x, I have 12, and I'm minus 15. Okay, so that's negative 3. So if we ended up with a negative power, that x goes into the denominator, and it's negative 3 becomes 3. 1 on top. Okay, x to the fourth divided by x to the second. So I've got x. I take 4. And now I'm on bottom, so I'm minus 7. 4 take away 7 is negative 3. So we'll need to move the x to the bottom, and what happens in negative 3? It becomes a positive 3. Now we put a 1 over the top of it then. Okay, x to the 6 divided by x to the 9th. Okay. So 6 minus 9, okay? 6 minus 9 is negative 3, so now that, since we have a negative power, that goes to the bottom, and what happens to the negative third power? It's now a positive third power with a 1. Okay, x to the 7th divided by x to the 10th. So x, we're going to take 7 minus 10, that's negative 3. If you end up with, if this ends up as a negative after I do the adding or after I do the subtracting, you need to move it into the denominator, and the negative 3 becomes positive 3. And I need a 1 to go over the top of it. All right, pretty easy. I just have 4 to do.